So I feel like gamers sometimes get a bad rep when we think about health and exercise, but we as humans all have the ability to grow and develop the different parts of our body through different targeted exercise routines. The rice bucket stuff I'll talk you through shortly directly targets the muscles in your hands, your forearms, your upper arm and your shoulder. These are all muscles and areas we use for gaming and therefore feels like a good, cheap exercise for us as gamers to do and to help us improve our strength and resistance to injury in those key areas. So I'd encourage everyone to do their own research if they're planning to get started doing this rice bucket exercise routine. But having said that, I've noticed some immediate benefits doing these exercises over the last 4 days. So I'm doing them specifically to accelerate my shoulder rehabilitation program. Many years ago, I broke my little finger knuckle on my right hand, and I've since basically had limited use of my little finger because it's weak and uncomfortable. After about 4 or 5 days of morning and night rice bucket training, I've noticed a huge improvement in the strength and usefulness of my little finger. I can more comfortably aggressive claw grip my mice as a result, and that's on mice that previously I wouldn't have been able to aggressive claw. And I think that's a massive win already in 5 days. I see a lot of talk online about hand, wrist and shoulder pain in people while they game. And I think if we all spent a little bit of time working on our injury prevention, we'd all be better off for it. Plus, exercise is good for your well-being, so exercising is never time spent poorly. So I'm doing this routine twice a day at the moment. Basically, I'm squeezing and twisting my hand in a bucket of rice, and then the other way, so I'm squeezing one way, and then the other way I'm extending my fingers, and I'm basically just repeating this in the bucket of rice. I'm doing it for a minute on each hand, and then I'm swapping over and I'm doing it on the other side. And I'm doing that for 6 minutes. I'm doing 3 minutes on each side. That's all it is. And that's what you can see in the background at the moment in the video. So I'm doing that twice a day at the moment, morning and night. But I'd recommend someone new to this sort of stuff would do it 2 or 3 times a week. So give yourself time to recover and don't cause injury through your blind enthusiasm. Also, make sure you warm up a little before you do this. Just shrugging your shoulders and clenching and closing your fists will just increase the blood flow to those areas and will just make sure your body's more prepared for the exertion. You don't want to go completely cold into doing this sort of exercise. I do think it's important to address some of the concerns I've seen around rice bucket training online, and they are mostly focused around rice bucket training's application to strength-based sports like climbing and weightlifting. Their criticism is generally around the effectiveness of this exercise in building and developing strength, and the movements of the rice exercises not being particularly applicable to their sports, which I think is really fair. I also think it's fair to say, in counter to that, is that gamers aren't typically training for strength, at least not to improve their gaming performance. And the movements that I use while rice training aren't completely alien in the context of gaming. We do contract and extend our fingers while we aim in gaming, so it doesn't feel completely alien to me that we're doing that in a bucket of rice, We do tend to use finger movements and wrist rotations while we are aiming our cursors, after all. I think we as gamers are more interested in developing resistance to injury than we are about making optimal gains in strength. Rice bucket training has been proven to build the strength of the muscles and the tendons in our hand, wrist and elbow. It also activates muscles deep in your shoulders. So it's cheap to get started and it doesn't take much time to do. It also requires no contact with grass, which is perfect for most of you watching. So it feels like a really easy, good injury prevention exercise for most of us sat at home doing just desk jobs. Our hobbies also us sat at a desk, and you can get those just repetitive strain injuries. If we can strengthen those muscles before it gets to a point where it's sore and you need to go and see someone for help, a doctor or whatever it is, then that would be, I think, the preference. A few things I want to say before I go, just to make you aware of. If you are experiencing any pain in your shoulders, wrists or hands, whatever it is, just make sure you speak to a professional before you go away and buy a load of rice and a bucket. Just ask them if it's safe for you to do that. I'd hate to be, the cause of more pain for you. Just make sure if you're going from doing your rice training to gaming, that you are washing your hands after you've done your rice training, because rice is quite dusty and you'll get dust all over your peripherals, but mostly your mouse pad. So in terms of the equipment that I use, it's just a 25 litre bucket. I've got 10 kilograms of rice inside. super cheap, super easy to get a hold of. So another thing I want to touch on is don't go too crazy too soon. So I'm doing 6 minutes at the moment, that's 3 minutes on each side. I think if you're brand new to exercise and you're brand new to rice bucket training, you probably want to just test the waters a bit before you start cranking out that sort of volume. So you might want to do just 20 seconds on each side and do that for a few more rotations just to get a feel for what your body's limits are before you go too deep into the higher numbers there. Make sure you're listening to your body and you're resting enough between workouts. You know, I would only suggest cranking up the volume when you've done a few sessions and you understand what you and your body is capable of and how you will react to that exercise. And finally, there's thousands of videos like this online that go way more in depth on routines and exercises you can do with your rice. You just don't listen just to me. Search for rice bucket training and get researching. All right, let me know if you'll be giving this a go. And that's it for now. Peace.